So often in life, fear is what holds us back, what stops us from achieving what we want to achieve. However, fear can be overcome, and 50 Cent is living proof of that. What is good, YouTube? My name is Ash Porter and welcome to my channel, and today I have a really interesting book for you. It is The 50th Law by 50 Cent and Robert Greene. Robert Greene, the main writer in this book, is a best-selling author, is world-renowned, has like a ton of books that have done super well, and is best known for writing about power, strategy, and seduction. 50 Cent, who a lot of this writing is based around and does have his own contributions, as we know, is a world-renowned musician, an entrepreneur, businessman, actor, and director. I've been a big fan of 50 Cent for a while now, and I am a big admirer of his talent. The 50th Law focuses around 50 Cent's story, his rise from like a grim background where he rises from literally the bottom now to the top of the music industry and business as well. Greene pulls out all the lessons that we can learn from 50's life, and particularly focusing around the overcoming of fear to achieve what we want. Now, I will just say that this isn't my favorite book ever. You know, I really was excited to do this video about it because I feel like all my other videos so far, I've been absolutely raving about every book, saying how good they are. Now, this book is an exception in the way that I cannot discredit the way this book has been delivered and is crafted, and Robert Greene is clearly an exceptional writer, and that's why his books do so well. However, I will say that there were some fundamental things that were sort of promoted in this book that go against some of my core values and like who I'm trying to shape myself into. But they were really interesting to read about, and I will come on to that later. Despite this book having some stuff which I didn't agree with, it was actually full as well of other stuff which I'm taking away with me, things to learn from, points to start putting into action in my life that I really enjoyed. And so despite it being something I don't always agree with, I really do recommend this book to read because it is really interesting. You know, sometimes it's really important and really good for us to read stuff that we disagree with, which challenges our worldviews, which opens up our eyes a little bit to different perspectives. And you know, it's okay to disagree with stuff, but you have to be able to learn from it and willing to engage with it. And I think this book is one of those moments for me. Guys, I really hope you're enjoying the video so far. Please can you consider liking and subscribing and turning on notifications because it helps support the channel, and I really appreciate it. Thanks so much, bye. The key concept in this book, which it's all based around, is this idea of overcoming fear, that is exemplified in 50 Cent's life, where, you know, there were multiple times where he had to overcome fears to rise up and be who he wanted to be and find the success he wanted to success. And this book is all about sharing that and trying to encourage and inspire all of us to overcome our fears. Fear can affect us in many different ways, but ultimately what it does is it holds us back from being, firstly, from being ourselves, but also being our best selves and achieving what we want to achieve. Whether that's we're so concerned with what other people think that we aren't acting as who we are and we're trying to fit into who they want to be, or we're trying to fit into, you know, the supposed order that's going on around us. All of it can hold us back and restrain us. 50 Cent, Robert Greene, and you know, even myself, they want to share how we can overcome that fear to be our best selves and finding a way to stop fear from holding us back. One of the first concepts and discussions that I really enjoyed in this book was this idea of ownership versus money. And to kick us off, I just want to read a quote from the book which describes this really well. And so they say, "Keep in mind the following. What you really value in life is ownership, not money. If ever there is a choice, more money or more responsibility, you must always opt for the latter. A lower paying position that offers more room to make decisions and carve out little empires is infinitely preferable to something that pays well but constricts your movements." Now, I think that is great. This idea that responsibility, ownership, autonomy is always better than money. As this section continues, they go on to say that as you carve out more responsibility and more of your own decision making, that money will come along with that. You know, they say it's a long game, not a short game. But money aside, I think it's true for most areas of life that those times where we get to make decisions where we have more responsibility and control. I know for me, I'm often happier in those scenarios. And so it's not just about money, it's about finding that happiness and that contentment and that space to grow. You know, when you're in those positions where you can have more responsibility, you're going to be growing more as a person as well. And so I love this idea that, you know, autonomy, responsibility, ownership is more valuable than money. Second thing I really enjoyed, which is a common theme in books like this, which I'll just repeat it again, it's this idea of overcoming the fear of failure. 50 Cent is big on trying new things, trying new ventures, pushing the boat out and being willing to fail while trying lots of different things. Alright Steph, imagine this, a website where anyone can upload videos to talk about whatever they want.
That already exists.
Alright, okay. Imagine a business where I write these short little poems and then I print them on postcards and sell them on Etsy.
That's my idea. You can't do that.
Final one. Imagine if I tried to become a pro World of Warcraft player.
You tried that for 2 months and gave it up?
The key is learning to overcome those moments of failure and to keep going and being willing to keep trying new things. Now, the third thing of key info is going to be one of those bits that I didn't agree with, but I think is really interesting to talk about. And this is like a chapter, a section which they kind of title The Art of Knowing When to Be Bad. So in this bit, Green and 50 Cent, within the context of 50's story, but also a wider application to it, basically promote the use of deception, manipulation, and outright force at what they would call appropriate moments. They state that everyone has a flexible moral compass when it comes to their own self-interest. And so we might as well make the most of this and actively choose to be flexible rather than doing it spontaneously and randomly. Now, I understand this concept and I probably do agree with the fact that as humans we do probably have, if we're being real, like flexible moral compasses. You know, for me, I'm sure that is true. I'm sure that, well, I'm not sure, I know that there are times where we can be more flexible with these things that we say we hold so valuable and high in our moral standards. And that is the case for all of us. However, even though accepting that, I want to call firstly myself to a higher standard of morals, that I want to be aware of that flexible moral compass. I just can't endorse the idea of actively using manipulation, force, deception to get what we want. But what I will say is, for me saying this now, you may feel like, oh, that's horrific, how could they write about this? When actually the reality is, in the book there's so much more context to that. You know, like I said, this book, this teaching is all wrapped up within 50's heartbreaking and admirable life story and his rise from like nothing to success. And as someone who grew up in a middle-class village in the middle of the UK, born into, you know, amazing privilege as a middle-class white male, I can't really sit on a high horse and judge the actions of someone else. And so, you know, like I said, actually I have great admiration for 50 Cent and how he's managed to raise himself up in life and success and and achieve what he wants. However, I will say I just can't actively promote this lifestyle beyond that. And you know, just because 50 did it and 50 like says that these things can be used to gain success, doesn't mean that we should all be using them as well. And so after saying that, the final bit of key information is another, I think an absolute gem that I haven't heard much elsewhere. And that is the key, or in 50's mind, one of the keys to his success, whether he was selling drugs on the street or whether he was a musician or businessman or whatever, is know your target audience really, really well. Like, they give examples of back when 50 was younger and he was dealing drugs on the street. The way he gained the upper hand and was better than his competitors is, instead of distancing himself from those he sold the drugs to, and I think they call them drug fiends in the book, which is a pretty grim way of saying it, but rather than being scared of them and distancing himself from them, he befriended them and he immersed himself in their world and their understanding and their culture. He got to know them, and therefore that gave him an advantage in knowing, truly knowing his target audience. He knew their inner lives, their aspirations, their frustrations, their resentments, and all of that gave him a better understanding of how to build on that and be better at what he was doing. But he also did this when he became, a musician. There's stories in the book of him creating online forums where he anonymously released early or leaked some of his mixtapes or his music to get a public reaction, and then he would read through them all and try and understand what his audience liked and didn't like. And by doing this, he got a better understanding and could work on his craft and make a better product. In the book it says, you must crush as much distance as possible between you and your audience. I think this is a great way to summarize it and a great approach to have in whatever you're doing. So that was the 4 bits of key information that kind of stood out to me in this book. There is way more, give it a read. But now let's get into what I'm taking away with me. Number 1, this last bit of key info, this idea of really knowing your target audience or the people you're working with or for. I think this just blew my mind a little bit because of the way the stories that were told and his examples in this, and it just made me think about my life. And so, YouTube is the obvious one, this channel, trying to know my target audience, get feedback, that kind of stuff. But also it was, my everyday job. I work with people every day, and my job is very people focused. And actually I know that I probably need to up how involved I am with these people and getting to know them even better so I can do the best work possible. And then number 2, the second thing I'm taking away, which I feel like in every one of these kind of self-help success storybooks, they always come back to trying new stuff out, not being afraid to fail. Again, I feel inspired by that. But I think the thing that stood out that's slightly different in this book is that it's not they don't just promote trying new things and not being afraid to fail, but they promote trying a lot of new things, multiple things at once, trying to create a lot of different avenues where you can succeed, where you can try and grow in. And I think that's a really interesting thought for me about, I'm trying out YouTube, I'm slowly trying out blogging, I'm learning to edit, I'm trying to learn photography, and these are all things I'm slowly learning and I'm not very good at, but I'm growing in. And it's is there even more stuff? Little things, little creative things to add to my week where things that can turn into maybe sources of revenue or sources of just happiness and achievement and fun. So the third one, this is something which I didn't actually cover in the key information about this book, just because 1, go read the book for yourself because there's so much more in it, and 2, these videos have limited time. But this is an idea that I first heard about in Cal Newport's book Deep Work, and then 50 and Robert Greene talk about it in this book, which is really interesting. And it's this idea of harnessing boredom. In our society, in our world, boredom's painted as this really negative thing, and my whole life I've grown up trying to fill that void, trying to occupy that space and never be bored. That's why we get addicted to our phones. That's why we get addicted to constantly doing things and to have our brain constantly ticking and working. However, 50 talks about this idea that actually when you're bored, when you can harness boredom, when you can work through boredom. So let's say you're like trying to master a craft. So for him it was, I don't know, writing lyrics, like writing music. Like, we all get passionate about stuff, but we hit that point where actually it doesn't become quite as fun and it becomes a bit of a graft. The best people are able to keep learning, they're able to fight through that boredom and come up with amazing creative ideas and work on their craft even more. And it's so interesting because it's so easy when you get bored to put something down and say, oh, I'm not inspired anymore, I'm going to move on to something else, or I'm bored, I'm not enjoying this anymore, this isn't what I thought it would be. And actually, yeah, it's made me think a lot about, gosh, you know, they probably do, the people who are putting in 10,000 hours to become the best at something, they probably get bored a lot. It's not like they're going to be enjoying that whole process. And that actually, to be the best us, to find success in those things we want, we have to be able to fight through that boredom. And I know for me, the reason I'm taking this away is because this is an area that I suck at. I'm not good at being bored. You know, I've tried to grow in it since I read in deep work, and I learned about that like a year or two ago. But I know it's an area that I have so much room for growth in. But I feel that it's good when you hear something from multiple sources, you start to believe it's even more true and it's even more important. And so I really enjoyed this section that you can go read about, and I'm taking this away, that we've got to harness and master boredom. That is what I'm taking away with me. That has been the key information. Like I said at the start, even though I don't agree with everything in this book, I really do recommend it. It is worth a read. There is some really good stuff in there as well. And you know, even if you're just interested a bit more in 50 Cent's life story, like, it's good. It's full of really good stuff. I've really enjoyed it. That has been The 50th Law by Robert Greene and 50 Cent. I have been Ash Porter. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.